Welcome to Crushing with Abby O. I'm your host and body optimization coach, Abby O'Sullivan. I am passionate about helping you navigate your health and self-love journey, and I'll be sharing all of the secrets on utilizing nutrition, movement, stress management, mindset, and more in order to help you fit self-care into any moment of your day. We are going to bust through the health and fitness industry bullshit. We're going to have a laugh, and we might even cry sometimes, but then we're going to crush our day. Thank you for tuning in. I'm so excited to have you here. Let's go. Welcome back to another episode of Crushing with Abby O. Today's guest is going to help you crush your goals. How fitting is that? Paige Mitchell is a life coach, and she is here to share with us how to stop setting vague goals, which I love this term because I know that I have been a person that was setting vague goals. And they were goals that were sort of based on what other people were doing and what I thought that I should be doing. And getting clear on your why and what you really want in your life is so important. So I love that we're having this discussion today. She's going to share some tips to help you get out from under the overwhelm of your goals and how big they might feel, and navigating your self-talk while you achieve them. A little bit more about Paige. She is a board-certified life coach on a mission to help you craft a lifestyle that supports your values. She works with badass goal-getters to reach their most ambitious dreams so that they can live a fulfilling life and make a difference in the world in their own unique way. As a former counselor, she decided to switch careers and start her own coaching business in 2020. Now she teaches others how to become the best versions of themselves in their everyday life. Please welcome Paige Mitchell to the podcast. Welcome, Paige, to the podcast. It's so nice to have you here today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we met on Instagram and you're a life coach, but I know that you haven't always been a life coach. So I would love for you to share your story of what you were doing before and how you transitioned into becoming a life coach.
Sure. So I guess short version, if I can make it short.
Sure, whatever you want.
There's all kinds of versions, right? Small, medium, large, of my story. I would say that to start out, that as a child, I've always been super curious, super passionate about human relationships, human behavior. I didn't have the language at the time that that's what psychology was. And it wasn't until high school where I realized this is amazing. This is so natural to me. I'm getting amazing grades. Like, okay, this is clearly my thing. And so I went to college, got my bachelor's in psychology. I double minored in sociology and communications because it just felt all related. And I had the goal of becoming a therapist. Now, in the back of my head, I actually, I was young, but I looked at Tony Robbins and I was like, what does he do? Why is he so amazing? How did he get to, where he is right now? And I didn't see anything about like, go to college for a motivational speaker. Like I didn't see
Right.
any of that, but that was always in the back of my head, was like, how can I have that kind of image? Or because I love performing, I'm also a dancer and an actress and a singer.
Cool.
So like being on stage is also like really natural to me. So I still had those dreams and aspirations in the back of my head of like like, can Paige be like a Tony Robbins? But I moved forward and I was like, okay, well, it looks like the mental health field is guiding me towards being a psychologist or a therapist. So I worked at an eating disorder hospital right out of my undergrad, and I worked with substance abuse. I was an administrative assistant. I was a behavioral health counselor. So I got really involved in the field. I learned everything about backstage and being on the floor. And then I enrolled in my master's in counseling, which was like a 3.5-year program. I did an internship in Hawaii, which was really cool. And so I lived there for 6 months, and that's actually where I was born. So it was really nice to just, get back to those roots. And then after graduation, that's over 10 plus years of already kind of being immersed in that mental health field. I just was really burnt out. I had to be honest with myself that even though since, I was 17 years old and decided, okay, psychology has to be the linear career path, I realized that this isn't going to be sustainable for me long term. So I had to come to grips with, okay, Paige, what else can you do that isn't therapy? What else? What other occupations are there? How else do you want to help people? What do you actually want to do on a day to day where you're not so drained and emotionally attached to your clients, where it's
Mm-hmm.
hurting your own self care? And so I looked into life coaching, and then it kind of just came full circle of like, hey, remember you loved Tony Robbins? I'm like, oh yeah, I totally forgot. Like that like
Yeah.
dream kind of like buried, but now it's like come back up again of like speaking and being a coach and helping people be like with their dreams and motivation and all that good stuff. Like that kind of just sparked my energy. And so in 2020, I decided to open my own coaching business. Started with career coaching, due to pandemic reasons, of course, everyone losing their jobs. And I that's where I started. And now I'm specifically focusing on working with really goal setting, ambitious people who have those, long-term dreams for themselves of making a better life.
Mm-hmm.
They just need help getting there. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really where, long story short, where my journey from counselor to coach has become.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like that has all given you a really amazing foundation for what you do now too.
Yeah, I would say I think I'm in a unique place where I do have my counseling and clinical experience
Mm-hmm.
that might set me apart from another life coach.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important. It was important for me to get those credentials and to get that further education. And I'm huge on ethics and making sure that I'm making the best decisions, based on what I learned from my clinical
Mm-hmm.
experience, and just making sure I'm not taking advantage or I'm not like, saying something or giving advice that is not even in my wheelhouse. Like I want to make sure, I'm doing the best that I can from like a moral and values perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's super powerful. And it's your experience is powerful for someone to have on their side as well. And the fact that you are willing to stay within your scope, not just like
Yeah.
willy-nilly, because we see that a lot.
Yeah. I think what's really important is, I think because I have worked with all demographics and populations, I've really seen it all. I've seen trauma, anxiety, depression, like I've seen every end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to hop on a phone call with someone that I just met and having, my go-to questions, right? Of like, hey, is coaching a fit for you? Are we a fit for each other? I also have that knowledge of like, these are some maybe red flags. These are some things that maybe they're not appropriate for coaching, but they're appropriate for therapy or they're appropriate
Mm-hmm.
for something else. So I definitely, I'm a huge just advocate of referring out,
Mm-hmm.
because I know I'm not a match for everyone. So
Mm-hmm.
it's also like really important to know, where, where can you help? And also who do you want to help?
Totally, totally relate to all of that. And I know coming from the fitness space, there can be just people who are like, will just take anyone's dollar, whether they
Yeah.
really fit their program or not. And I'm like, you don't actually have to take every client, even if they're forcing the money into your hand. Like there could be something that fits better for them at this time. And we have to be brave enough to say that too, for ourselves and for that person. Like it's doing them a disservice as well as you taking on potentially a challenge that you actually don't want to.
A
Even
hundred
just
percent.
because you have the experience doesn't mean that you want to take that on. I can also relate to the psychology interest. That was my like growing up, very interested in that. Went to school for that before I dropped out of college for the whatever the relationship things. But I was I was going to go in more of a criminal justice path
Hmm.
and actually work with criminals. And where I live, we actually have a federal penitentiary medical, we call it the Fed Med, And I'm like, that's what I would have been doing.
Yeah.
But instead I went a totally different route, and instead of provided therapy in the setting of a beauty studio for a long time. It's a
Yeah.
total 180, but much more pleasant working environment. So
I love that. It's kind of weird to think about like where else would have I gone, or like this is what I would have been doing if I just made a different decision. Kind of like that
Mhm.
butterfly effect thing,
Yeah,
It's weird to think about.
totally. Yeah. So you really love serving women, and you kind of did mention it already, but who do you really enjoy serving?
Hmm. Yeah, I think based on this was kind of important for me just as a business owner, right? When you have to figure out your niche, your niche. I don't know how to say that word.
Both ways. Both ways are
I think
fine.
it depends,
Yeah.
right? If it's
Right.
like European or Canadian, or I don't know. They may say it differently. Anyway, just as a business owner, you need to narrow down your demographic. And I think for me, I always struggled because I am just naturally a server, a helper. I want to offer my services to as many people as possible. But as you know, as an entrepreneur, you can't serve everybody.
Mhm.
And so I think based on who I worked with when I was a counselor, kind of like picking and choosing, like, oh, I really liked this part of their identity, or I liked this part of the process. And then working with my coaching clients, kind of just looking back at those characteristics of the past clients I worked with. And I was like, if I can just pick apart and make this like robot of the ideal human being that I would love to work with, it would be someone who is ambitious. I say goal getter. So someone that naturally is kind of that high achiever. They know what they want. Even if it's a little vague, they still have this dream to look forward and really make an impact. I think that's the big difference.
Mhm.
The thing that sets apart is, does this human want to make a difference in the world in their
Mhm.
own unique way? I don't
Mhm.
really care what they want necessarily. But whether that's a small impact, like maybe within their community, or they want to make an impact on a global scale,
Mhm.
they want to serve as well. And so I definitely love working with people who are already inspired, because that inspires me. And that just gets me so jazzed to
Mhm.
work together. I had a conversation the other day with someone, and we just met on the phone. And I was kind of like telling her, like, yeah, like this is the type of people I work with. This really hypes me up. And she's like, oh my God, Paige, like just talking to you, I wanna lift a chair, or I wanna like lift the table and like,
Yeah. She was getting
Hulk it out.
excited.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Hulk it out. And I just thought that was really funny. So yeah, I
Yeah.
I obviously get very passionate about, because there's so many people out there that do want to make a difference, who are badass people.
Mhm.
And that's where I want to be, in that space. I want to be
Yeah.
around those people too.
Yeah. You can just hang out, be in their back
Bad.
pocket, like
Yes.
helping them get unstuck. And so, for listeners who may, I mean, like life coach is kind of, I don't want to say generic, but it is kind of that
Hmm.
broad term, right? Just like health coach is very broad. And
Yeah.
then we niche down. But for the listeners, can you give us an overview of how you, like, if I came to you, like, how would you help?
So I think a life coach for me is someone that is a holistic view. And what I mean by that is, I am assessing all of the areas of your life. Um, Before, right, I was specifically a career coach. I was a career fulfillment coach, even
Mhm.
more specifically. So I, at that time, measured how your job impacts your life and how can you find fulfillment within your career.
Mhm.
With life coaching in this new direction I'm in, and helping these goal getters and ambitious people, let's look at all of the areas of your life. All the areas of your life are separated into categories. We have health, we have career, we have spirituality, we have social, all the different things, right? There's so many different categories. And how can we assess to see what are our goals in each of those?
Mhm.
Maybe there's something we're struggling with, like maybe our career and our spirituality is a little bit low. It's not where we want it to be. we can hyper focus on those areas, but you have to understand that everything is related. Everything bleeds into another area of your life.
Really does.
So I take that holistic view of, okay, like let's assess. That's really what it is. I use kind of a tracking system. I use scaling, like tell me 1 to 10, 10 being amazing. Where are you in your career journey? Where are you in your self-care journey, right? Your personal development journey, your mental health space, like all of that. And we just see, okay, like what are those areas that I might want to focus and improve on? And I know that if I improve one, another one will also go up just by default. So I don't know if that answered your question, but basically it is discouraging that life coach is very broad and kind of vague. But for me, it's so important that if you want to have this particular life, if you dream about a particular lifestyle, what can we do in your day-to-day? How can we build those habits and patterns and goals right now to get you where you want to be? And it'll just depend on the client on what those areas are.
Yeah, for sure. Because one may want to concentrate on one area, which kind of leads me to my next question, because I know that, especially in the industry that I'm in, that there's a lot of like, I want to say it's not surface level, because everything has a different importance to different people, right? But we think that we need help with one thing, like we're really focused on this thing, but there might be something else that we actually really need to work on first. So what does that typically look like with clients for you? Like, what do you normally see them coming to you like with a problem of, and I'm phrasing my question so terribly here, but you got the idea. Like,
yeah, I do.
What do you then see? Like, actually, we need to work on this first. I got it out.
I love it. No, that's beautiful. So I base my coaching approach on values, and ideally my dream client would already know their core, like their top 5. If you don't, totally cool. We can discover that together and figure that out. But basically, your values are those core principles that are really important to you. They're how you make your decisions. You either lean towards or away your values. So even an example of like loyalty, trust, laughter, education, right? These are just some examples of like what a value could be. Do we know and have an understanding of what those are first before we even look at our problems, right? So if, say, like integrity is one of my top 3 values, and I'm working for a company that treats me like shit, or I'm in a relationship that's really toxic, or I have been like, I don't have any friends, or whatever it is, how can you see that being an effect with integrity, right? Where do you see yourself on that line?
Yeah, it's like a misalignment, essentially.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So I would say first, can we identify your values? What's important to you? What do you want? How can we get even clearer on that? Then let's look at your quote unquote problems. And coaching isn't about, I'm going to fix everything for you. It's about how can we explore this together, knowing that you have the answers within. I always believe that my clients, maybe they're just struggling right now with confidence or empowerment, but I want to encourage them that they already are resilient. They already know I'm just kind of here as that third party perspective, that bird's eye view, to help you see other routes, and we can brainstorm together other solutions, but knowing that you have the solution. So if you're coming to me with like, oh, I think like this is my problem, or this is what's going on, this is what I'm not happy about, I kind of go with the surface level problems, which are basically symptoms, right? I'm tired. I'm burnt out. I didn't get the promotion. My boyfriend sucks, whatever, right? These are kind of that surface level, what we see on a day-to-day. And it's my, role to kind of peel the onions, peel the layer,
Yes.
Not too much though, because I do want to make sure that like I'm not being a therapist at this time. Like I am exploring, but if it does get involved with trauma or something else really, really deep, I'm going to refer. But I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to make that distinction. But still, we
Mm-hmm.
can explore this together and figure out a little bit more of like, okay, if this is your symptom, how do you think you got there? Was there a time that you didn't experience this symptom? What do you want instead? How do you think you could get there? What do you think is blocking you from getting there? Just asking a lot of powerful questions, basically.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. Yeah, we love a root cause. So
Yeah.
like so like here's the weed on the surface, but what's hiding underneath it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I think
Mm-hmm.
that's such a powerful reminder too to be that third party to remind people to show them like the overall path, but that you do have the answers within. And we
Mm-hmm.
just get so distracted and kind of wrapped up in what's everyone else doing or what's everyone telling me or what should I want or what should I be doing and so and so is doing this and someone has an opinion about this and we just like forget to sit down and listen to ourselves. And I have found success with coaching that way as well as like just lots of reminders to be checking back in with what does Abby actually want.
Yes.
Which I so many good segues here. Which I loved this that you told me this is that one of the things that you help people overcome is vague goals. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that term. And I know that that's a huge area I'm sure that you work with people on is goal setting. So I would first love for you to just to define what do you mean by overcoming vague goals and then kind of giving like a how you work through that process with somebody to help us stop setting vague goals because I have been one of those people. I have struggled with that myself. It isn't really, yeah. So I'll let you take the floor on that.
Yeah, I would say first off that we're conditioned just as humans to have vague goals, period. We look at something and we're like, oh, I want that. And then we just leave it there. We don't attach a why. We don't attach, we don't really make, and we don't really make any like action plans either. We kind of just say like, oh, I want this. This is
Mm-hmm.
shiny. Look at it. It's pretty, but that's super vague. And I would say as like a definition of vague goals is something that is it's a negative, but like just something that's not specific, something that is a lack of results.
Mm-hmm.
When it's vague, there's no way to measure what you want and why you want it. Like,
Yeah.
what's the point? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, one way to look at it is the SMART goal acronym, SMART, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and maybe your followers are too. But really just getting specific. First of all, that first acronym is why is this important? Thinking of this goal as like your mission statement. We're trying to identify some clarity and really target that area for improvement so that we can avoid ambiguity. Something like, I will create, or I will oversee, or I will, XYZ. We want kind of a mission statement of exactly what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Because then that's kind of refraining from like, oh, like, well, I want to be better at this. Okay, well, what the hell does better mean? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or so first, like, let's get really specific. And some things you can ask yourself is like, you know, what exactly do I want to accomplish? What is that final outcome that I want? And then I would move on to M for measurable, right? Like, how can we track this? How can we just make this as quick as possible? Like, if, say, for example, this goal is I want to write a book. Okay. So anything that you've done that day, is that towards writing a book? Yes or no? Like, make it very binary.
Mm-hmm.
Don't drag it out of like, oh, like maybe I did. No, it's either yes or no. I did this or I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And just, yeah, like I said, like, how can you track it? How can you quantify and measure the outcome. So it's like, I want to write a book. Okay, cool. That means you have 80 plus years to do this. Do you have a timeline? Do you have any, you know what I mean? Like how
Yeah.
vague that is.
Like
And
you're going
it's
to do
just
5 pages a day, 10 pages a day, like
once a year. Like,
yeah, right.
it's so vague because you can always
Once a
say,
year.
like, as a child, I've always wanted to be an author. Okay, cool. That's so vague. Like, why? Like, what about being an author? What kind of author? Like a science fiction author? Like, get to the
Mhm.
nitty gritty here.
Mhm.
And then I
That's
would
like
say,
saying like, I want to be a coach.
right. And you're like,
Okay.
cool.
What kind of
Sounds
damn coach do you want
good.
to be? Why do
Yeah.
you want it? Because so and so made it look really cool on Instagram.
Cool. Why do you, and you just keep going, right?
Yeah,
Why do you want to do that? And
exactly.
then just keep
Yeah.
going. So then I'd also say with the SMART goals, A is attainable. Is it realistic? Just check in with yourself. Like, don't bite off more than you can chew. If you said, I want to write a book and I'm going to write 30 pages a day, is that really necessary? Or can you actually do that? I don't want to say
Mm-hmm.
you can't, but also, can we be realistic here? If you anticipate, will this goal give you more stress or will it create more exhaustion for you? So how
Right.
can this really be something, is there anything else that could prevent you from reaching this goal?
Yeah.
Is something I would ask.
And that's
And yeah,
that's
go ahead.
another area that you come in with where you look at like their overall lifestyle and say like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the same thing with people like wanting to lose weight or whatever. They want to make all these changes at once, but it's like that's so overwhelming. And
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes you get that thing in your head and you get really excited, you're like, I can do this, I can do this. And you realize like, oh my God, I can't like take on too much. So that's why
Yeah.
we need somebody kind of helping us. Oh, but remember, look at the broader picture and it's
Mm-hmm.
okay if
Yes.
you don't like make that like bigger step. It's okay if you take little steps too, because we're still going to get
Yes.
there as long as we, have all of this in place.
Yes. I always say a couple terms. One is just like bite-sized pieces. Because
Mm-hmm.
imagine if you had this buffet, it's amazing food, like all of your favorite foods, right? And you're like, I want this now. And so, okay, even if you had all of that, you're not going to eat all of it.
You're gonna make
Like,
yourself
take
sick.
small little, yeah, and
Yeah.
you're going to make yourself
Yeah.
sick, AKA stressed, exhausted, overwhelmed, burnout. You don't even want it anymore. So take bite-sized action steps with your goals. We can just break it down, break it down, break it down. And then what's something I also like to say is, what is 1% that you could do today?
Mm-hmm.
1%, because if you keep adding up the days, that's 365% more that productive or whatever, that you're closer to achieving that goal.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
such
just
a good
1%.
point. Yeah, that's such a great point. It's in being able to break that down. I think that is really hard for a lot of people is they have that bigger goal, but it's so hard to break that down into like the manageable steps of like, how do you get there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then also asking, like, just the relevancy, like, why is this important to me? How is this related to my vision? Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we can get stuck with, yeah, I have this goal and everything, but we either get unmotivated or we get distracted or whatever. But like, asking yourself, in what way is this goal aligned with my life's purpose? Why is
Mm-hmm.
writing a book, am I doing it just because it's fun? Am I doing this because it's going to make an impact? Like, why would I even do this in the first place? And so if we can make it bite size, very, very small, so that we don't get overwhelmed, we know that even though it's a little action, we're still working towards it.
Mm-hmm.
We're still making that inspired action. And then the last thing I'll just wrap up of just the SMART goal acronym is just time related.
Mm-hmm.
Your deadline, it doesn't have to be legally binding, but if you want to make a fake contract with yourself, do it. Write on a calendar, or put it in your phone, or when you work with a coach. Like, what I do is, after every session, I ask you, what do you want to commit to for next week? I don't say, hey, you're doing this, 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 this. That's not my job. My job is to support you and keep you accountable for what you say you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So asking yourself, what is the date and time I want to commit to this? When will I start? When will I finish? How long will this take me to do it? How often should I do it? So really just get down with that time specific as well is really important.
Mm-hmm. I love that approach too, because you are placing the ball back in their court and giving them the autonomy to step up and make those decisions for themselves rather than waiting for somebody to make it for them. And I have seen, this is sort of what I've observed sometimes with coaching. And I mean, obviously I can't speak for everyone else's experience or anything like that, but it seems like it's really easy to, well, actually I can speak to my own experience. So there, I was like, I'm thinking of a lot of people, but I can also just speak in my own experience as it's really easy to get dependent on a coach in terms of them helping you make decisions where then they are making them for you. And you're just kind of taking that because it's so much easier than sitting there and thinking about it forever. Because a coach is a fast pass, right?
Yep.
Like, hey, it's bypassing all of this time that I would have spent like blah, blah, blah. So when they give you the answer, you're like going to go with it. But you still have to be able to take that and question whether that actually does fit with you, align with your values, align with your overall mission. If it's feasible for you to get done in that time, whatever, the answer might have been. But I think that it's very easy for people to become dependent on that opinion or that advice where they still have self-doubt when it comes to making certain decisions. Like, in your gut, like that's what you really want, so it's cool that you're getting the feedback, but it's also like for someone who has really struggled with the need for external validation and trying to overcome that in the last year, like I try to really like walk that line carefully. So that's where I'm coming from with my experience on that. But so that's why I love that approach, is like you're really still helping people learn how to do this on their own too, but with you as that guide. Like, you might be walking with them. You're not necessarily holding their hand, like, let me drag you along the path.
Yeah. It's so important. Yeah.
I always think of coaches as like a guide who are like shining a light on a path. And so, yeah, sometimes there's going to be times where you're kind of holding someone's like hand to kind of like redirect them maybe, or help them see the path a little clearer. But I think like it really sounds like you're walking along with somebody and just making sure they don't stumble too hard, like tumble down a ravine or something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think as a coach, what I've learned is we wear so many different hats. So sometimes I am a straight up cheerleader, like, yeah, let's go. You got this. Like, because maybe they don't have any support in their lives. So that's one role I could be. And then sometimes I'm more of an educator. I'm showing them a skill, or I'm helping them, I'm teaching them something that maybe they didn't learn about or they don't know. So kind of more that like teacher role. And then there's, I don't know, there's many different hats as a coach. And I think it just depends, because I'm a huge proponent of meeting them where they're at. So if I see their current situation, the tools that they have at the time, I'm going to meet you there and not assume you're supposed to like, know all these things right away and you're supposed to achieve. Like that's not how it works. So if I don't meet them where they're at, I'm doing a disservice and it's not going to be a great experience. So,
or that change is like a 180 from day to day. Like it happens slowly. So when people are building their confidence and working towards that, it happens slowly. And learning like the new skills, learning how to overcome limiting beliefs, for instance, that is something that's sort of an ever evolving practice. So it doesn't just happen in like one session and you're cured or one program or whatever, one season even. So it's kind of, because I don't know, we're always changing and growing as humans. There's always gonna be something that's challenging us. And that's also kind of the cool part.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it that way,
I think just being really gracious with your time, with the time, that you work with someone, or you're just working on yourself, even after like your program or sessions are over, whatever. Just being gracious and kind and gentle with yourself that, okay, I'm working on this. This is a goal. It's okay that it's not overnight, and just, yeah, like putting your hand over your heart and closing your eyes and just being like, I'm fucking doing the thing. Like, I'm awesome.
Yes. Let's just relax. Like we know we
Mm-hmm.
wanted it yesterday, but
We're
it's
here though. We're
okay.
here.
Yes, we're here. We're
Mhm.
still showing up.
Yes.
I love that. And then another thing that ties into goals then is overcoming limiting beliefs.
Hmm.
And you mentioned the self-talk aspect, and I
Hmm.
would love to hear a little bit more on your thoughts on maybe just like a simple tip for limiting beliefs and self-talk and as you're working towards your goals, like how to navigate that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you start out with a vague goal first, then how can you get a little bit more specific? And so, just like what we've been talking about on this episode, those questions to break it down, break it down. Then, once you feel pretty specific, once you've laid out, okay, like this is what I'm going to hold myself accountable to, this is what I'm going to commit to doing. And then, you do that for 2, 3 weeks, a month, a year, whatever. Can you track your own thoughts? What is that language that you're using on how you're achieving this goal? Are you beating yourself up like, oh my God, like this goal isn't like achieved yet? Like I suck. Like, what is your language? And can you practice that self awareness of just monitoring that for yourself? Because it's so important to listen to how you talk to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we say, like I said, like talking shit about ourselves or being really, really hard, adding this pressure that's not even needed, you're burning yourself out and you're
Mm-hmm.
making the goal not even fun anymore. You're making it an obligation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how can you check in with your thoughts? Some tips for very, very like beginners of what I've always encouraged people to do is literally setting a timer on their phone of like random times, like 2:32 p.m. for one day and then like 5:57 the next day, like whatever. But those are just a very quick, like, hey, check with your thoughts. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what shows up on that little notification. Like, what's my thoughts right now? So just something to practice of like, where is my headspace? I'm a huge journal person. So I always encourage my clients to write that shit down, do a brain dump.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe especially if you're having like a shitty self-talk day, write all
Yeah.
those fears and insecurities out there, and
Mm-hmm.
see for yourself how that is your own roadblock from
Mm-hmm.
achieving your goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah.
Journaling and like writing down the angry thoughts and then looking at it and then balling it up, throw it
Hmm.
away. Bye bye.
It's not, yeah. And you can reframe them. And I would say that as a last tip too, is remember that you are the author of your story. You
Mm-hmm.
can change it at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Even if for 30 plus years, I've always said Paige is afraid of heights or something like that. Like you may sound crazy by saying Paige loves heights.
Mm-hmm.
And you just keep like repeating that. However, your brain does not know the difference between what's real and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say give it a whirl, create some affirmations, reframe what you want instead, hyper focus on that, change your goals, the timeline, the measurables, all those bite-sized things, change it to that new mindset, that new reframe of how you want to be this different person. Even once the goal is achieved, how are you going to continue in your life? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I would also say, remember that the power of language and the meaning we associate with our words is so important. And you can always change your story.
Mm-hmm. I always love that I don't know who said that, like you're the author of your story of your life. I don't know who originally said that, but I've heard that a bunch and I'm like, it's so true. Like you can rewrite the script. And I actually was doing a journaling exercise not too long ago. I was just journaling and I said something, like wrote something to that effect on the paper. And then I literally wrote out my own script. I really like movies. And so I wrote myself like as the star of my own movie. I made myself a description, and I'm played by Abby O'Sullivan from Springfield,
Love
Missouri.
that. That's
But I set
awesome.
out like the theme of what's currently going on and then what she's going to accomplish and what she's overcome this year. And I did actually present this to some people not too long ago. And I did that all in like the movie voice too. I thought that was really hilarious,
That's
but it
awesome.
was really cool to kind of write it out there. And it's just like a different way to script. Like scripting is a type of journaling, kind of like that future self type thing. And I really enjoyed that. And it made me write about myself in a really positive way too, because of course, like the main character is going to have some flaws, like she's going to have overcome some things.
Hmm.
But I also wrote like she has shiny red hair and bright blue
Yes.
eyes, so it was really fun to, it was a nice way to talk about myself. And
Hmm.
we're not always in the mood to talk about ourselves in a nice way.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes, some days we're like, you suck.
Yeah, exactly.
But going back through and reading that, I was like, oh man, I really like this. This was nice. This is really nice that
Yeah,
I
I
did this.
love that.
This was
The
cool.
first time I learned about storytelling, and that was in graduate school, it was narrative therapy. So if any of you just want to
Oh,
Google narrative therapy,
ooh,
that's a specific approach. I think his name's Michael White.
write it down.
Yeah, it's just go ahead and Google it. That's really where I learned those core principles of narrative and building your story.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's just where I learned it from. And then of course we have all of these gurus and spiritual healers and manifestation coaches and all the things. Like we're all really regurgitating the same exact message. We're just like using a different lens, but it's
Yeah.
basically all the
Well,
same.
that's the thing is like you never know who's going to deliver it in the way that it hits you more
Mm-hmm.
than someone else did.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've heard very similar things before, but I started listening to a different podcast and that guy said it just in a way that hit me totally different that day. And I was
Yeah,
like, oh, that change in the wording or even maybe the tone, maybe just
totally.
the fact that it came from that different person. It doesn't even, you just never know how one person's message is going to hit you, or
Mm-hmm.
hit your client where they're like, oh my God, that resonated so clearly.
Yes.
And I just want to circle back and say, like, that's why really understanding your why is so important. And I went through a little, it was more of a social media course, but we got really deep. And as a colleague of mine, and just based on my first ever conversation with him, period, he does not fuck around with surface level conversation. And I love that
Mm-hmm.
about him. But he made us get so super clear on our why and like rewrite it and rewrite it until we were really, truly like, we really, really felt that.
I love that.
And that was one of the coolest exercises because like I don't know if I can remember off the top of my head right on the spot, but when I go back to it, I'm like, yes, that's still exactly what I want. That's sort of been what I've been pulled to for a long time. Even if I was seeing lash clients, like if they were telling me they wanted to get a new job, I'm like, yeah, girl, write that resume,
Get
do
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Divorce your husband, move out of town, see the country. Like, I mean, like sometimes it would be like, I did it. I divorced my husband. Like you inspired me. And I don't think I ever
Yeah.
actually said that, just not for the record. Like,
Sure.
yeah, divorce your husband. But I'd be like, well, what do you really want? Like consider like, what do you really want? So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's so important to, that's why the clarity on all of that is so important. And it
Mm-hmm.
really is constructive to have somebody help guide you through that process because it's often like we sometimes just can't see once it see the forest for the trees or
Yeah.
something, see
Mm-hmm.
clearly. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very good with expressions.
That's okay. I got you.
Well, one last question,
Sure.
because you mentioned some of your previous like experience in theater. What are some of your passions outside of coaching, outside of work?
Yeah. So I've been dancing since I was 2 years old.
Is
Pretty
that
much
like classical dance or like swing dancing,
um
foxtrot?
no, I cannot do that shit.
That'd be so
Love people
fun.
that can. No, it's
Yeah,
so
I know.
cool.
I'm like, it's so
So
cool.
fun. I don't know. That's another challenge I've never tackled. But anyway, I'm used to like I've been trained ballet, jazz, hip hop, tap,
Cool.
all those things. And then I was on like, my high school dance team. We went to nationals, stuff like that. And then I became a dance teacher for several years. I danced like as a backstage or backup dancer at Red Rocks in Colorado.
Cool.
Judging different competitions, choreographed some competitions as well for some high school girls. So yeah, I love dancing. And what else? Like I said, I mean, I haven't been like singing in a really long time. I was like always in choir. But I love musical theater. That's a passion of mine. What else? I mean, I'm in Colorado. I do love hiking.
Yeah,
I'm
I was
not a
gonna
14er
say.
bitch, but I do
What's
love,
that? What's
I'm
that?
not a 14er bitch.
What's that?
That's where girls, guys, whatever, like their shit is every weekend we're hiking a 14er,
Okay, what's
like
the 14er?
14,000 feet.
Okay, I'm like, it's not 14 miles. Like, it has something to do with the elevation, Abby. But I'm
No,
like,
yeah, Denver
obviously,
itself
I live
is
in Missouri. It's different here.
yeah, Denver itself is 5,280, 5,280 miles above sea level, period.
Oh, so
So
like
when you go up in the
20,000.
mountain, yeah, it's a lot. So those are the like intense summit, where they got the backpacks and all that stuff. Like that's a lot of gear. I just like, the
Yeah,
occasional like 2-hour hike, and it has a
yeah.
nice like, oh, it's a nice lake or
That's a
something. And
pretty
I'm gonna go
view.
back down, and then I'm gonna go get a beer at the local brewery. Like
Yeah,
that's my jam.
that's so great. Yeah.
But yeah, I love that. I like being outdoors, yoga. Obviously a self-help junkie, so I just love listening to audiobooks and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I know that's a hard question for me sometimes because I'm like, I like to work on my business.
I know. I like
My
it's so
passion is
fun.
coaching.
Right. I
My
know.
passion is
Same.
making sure my dreams come true.
Yeah. 100%.
And
That's
snuggling with
yes.
my cat. Like
Yes. I love that. I don't have any pets. I do want a dog. I want a puppy and a kitten, and I want to raise them together at the
together.
same time so
They're
that they could be
buddies.
best friends. Yeah.
And
That's
then you
my
can start
dream.
an Instagram for you and you can
Oh yeah.
monetize that shit. And then your animals are earning you money because that's
That'd be great.
really,
That's the dream.
that would be amazing if I look back at her sleeping this whole time. She's just like
Yes.
curled up. She's so sweet.
I love it.
Well, awesome. I'm so like, this is the power of Instagram. I love being able to connect
Yes.
with new people. And so it's been so fun getting to connect with you. I did a live,
Mhm.
well, depending on when I release this, but I have also done a live with you on your Instagram. So it was so cool to come on to your Instagram and get to chat there and then have you come on to tell us more about yourself here. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share your tips and your knowledge with everyone. And I guess that's it. Do you have any last words for anyone?
I would just say, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for that compliment. I loved, go network, people. Like, even if you hate it, something as simple as sending a DM to someone's Instagram page that just looks really cool, obviously can go very far. I've had several success stories of making amazing connections with people I've never met in real life. However, some of them are closer than my actual friends in real life.
Yeah.
So
like
go out
Instagram
there.
wives,
Yes, for sure. So go out there, meet people, say hi, share your story. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I will talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Abby.
Okay. Thank you, Paige, for coming on the podcast and sharing so much insight to goal setting and coaching. It was a really thoughtful conversation. And I know there's a lot of nuggets for you, the listener, to take away and apply as you think about and go about achieving your goals. And like Paige said, we connected on Instagram and we've collaborated over there as well. And it just goes to show you the power of social media if you allow it to be something positive like that in your life, where you can connect with people and learn from them, find others that you can vibe with and collab with. Social media can seem so overwhelming and kind of negative in our lives sometimes, but there are so many positives to it as well, including meeting super cool people. So thanks again, Paige, and I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in to Crushing with Abio. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend and leave a 5-star review. As always, you can connect with me on Instagram at Coach Abio or drop me an email at hello@crushingpodcast.com.